So, well, let me start by saying why I know I'm fixed into monogamy is I actually have found a person where I feel all these needs are fulfilled. Like
Mhm.
this is a person that even though there's a language barrier, somewhat, her English is super good. My German is still very bad. Sehr schlecht. Uh, uh, even through that, we have amazing conversations. I've gotten so many ideas for episodes that have turned out super great on this show,
Mhm.
like which is awesome, and is like the show is a huge like part of my life. Like it's like therapy. And
Yeah.
so it's really great that not only is she's like totally in support of the show and like is happy to see me, get psyched up for it and put work into it and all that. But like our conversations together also kind of fuel a lot of what happens on the show. So
Mhm.
like that right there, super awesome, super hard to find.
Well,
Like
excuse me.
like in a person that like also ticks all the other boxes, right? Like
Sure.
you
And
know,
that like that's exceedingly rare.
mm-hmm.
So yeah,
That's why I moved to Germany.
well,
Like
yeah, and that's and what is it? Fourth time's a charm, I guess, or something. Like it, that is definitely a rarity, and it depends on your personality. Like me, I'm an explorer. I'm never content to sit idle. My friends and family and stuff, they're always like, oh well, one day you'll find the right person and settle down. And I'm like, what? I'm I'm an adventurer. I'm never gonna quote settle down, because that basically at that point I might as well crawl over and die. Like I to me, what fascinates me about life and polyamory and things, what draws me to it is that adventurous spirit, like meeting new people and exploring new relationships, and kind of exploring myself too. Like, how do I, like, because overcoming things in my mind that from the past, and becoming a better person. And that's one thing that is great about polyamory is that you have opportunities to learn new things that maybe you didn't even know you needed to learn, and stuff. And you get a lot of different interactions and different personalities, and it's kind of like, I could equate it to food, right? Like, sure, maybe pizza is the best thing ever, right? You absolutely love pizza. But to sit and eat pizza exclusively would be kind of dull, even though there's a lot of stuff that you could put on pizza. Like, if that's all you had to eat, it would be it would be kind of dull,
speak
so
for yourself.
yeah.
No,
So
yeah, but like I do get that, but um still like there is a certain depth that you can reach with a person, like connecting on that level, having that much immersion and saturation, growing together, going through hardships together, things like that, that I struggle to see how that could, like, how there would be kind of a parallel in the poly realm. Um, I mean, like, say if there's like more than two partners or something, right?
mm,
Like if you're splitting your time between like three different people, like who do you lean on in hard times? Who do you think you can see yourself like depending on in old age or things like that? Like
well,
uh
everybody, like that's one thing that tends to happen is, if there is a crisis, rather than having only one person that you can, or that can assist you in that, you have multiple people who care about you. you know, and sometimes you may be called on to respond to a crisis too, along with other people. You know, everybody rallies together and like, okay, you know, now you have a almost like a team. Um, Instead of just another person, there's a group of people.
If you
All
can
of them.
find them, maybe you can hire the Poly team.
Yeah, but that's one of the things too, like, and people who are struggling with, you know, maybe they're a little bit green, a little new to non-monogamy and are struggling with it, rather than it just being you yourself helping somebody work through that, another partner could be an assistant in that, and sometimes that's better too. It's like, you know, especially if you have like, say, like, um well, sometimes if they're like you and another partner, let's say there's some kind of drama or conflict having to do with the relationship, um you yourself trying to work through things could create like animosity, right?
Uh-huh.
There could be some form of animosity from the one partner because maybe the conflict is there, and sometimes having another partner be the guide, people will tend to listen to that person more, um, than I guess the primary. I get the whichever thing is in conflict.
Not
So you
not
have
that
like,
that's not that that's absent in monogamy. Like you can still have best friends that can fill that role and things
sure,
like that.
yeah.
Like
Well, and
I've had that before.
it's honestly no different than friendship, and really ultimately that's the thing that separates polyamory from different forms of relationships, or similar non-monogamous relationships, is that it is more than just stuff that happens in the bedroom. Like you are
Mhm.
primarily friends, right? That's the ultimate goal, is everybody is, they're friends essentially. And you know, it just so happens that at times there's sexual interactions, but it's not, that's not the primary focus essentially. And that's one of the things that I think is important, for helping people understand this, is that that's what, like, every time I mention polyamory, anybody that like discovers that or finds out basically that I'm polyamorous, um, that's the very first thing they go to is sex.
Mhm.
And I'm like, no, it's not about sex. It's there, like it is with any kind of, you know, even a monogamous relationship. There's sex there, but people don't, you know, if somebody finds out you're monogamous, they're not like, oh, so sex. They don't immediately jump to sex and think, oh, you're having sex with one person, huh? You know, like that, like it's it isn't. That's not what it's about. Like it's deeper than that. It's more about forming relationships that last, right? That are very deep and caring, and things like that, and making these connections.
Has there ever been you know, on any of these dating apps or whatever, have you ever come across a person that's seeking a poly relationship that is specifically platonic, let's say?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've seen that a few times. There are people who essentially are just looking for friends,
Uh-huh.
um, or like asexual essentially. So they just want like a relationship that isn't sex based or doesn't have any sex in it.
Uh-huh.
And I've talked to some people. I haven't like personally been involved in those kinds of relationships, but it's out there. Yeah, there's certainly people who engage in that, or that's what
Uh-huh.
their goal is, what they expect.
Hmm. So would you say, I think I know the answer to this, but of course, for like an interview's sake, would you say that you are in love with your partners in the same degree that you have been in the past in monogamous relationships?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I love everybody, and like in different ways. We all have our own sort of unique color, I guess,
Mhm,
in the spectrum.
mhm.
But yeah, absolutely. And in a way, it's almost more deep than back in my monogamous days.
Hmm.
There's something much more fulfilling about this particular lifestyle than when I was monogamous.
So even with like maybe less interaction together, you feel like there's let, let me put words in your mouth and see if I'm on the right track here. Would you say it's kind of like um, like when you paint and leave empty spaces, it kind of adds something to the whole piece? Is it something like
Yeah,
that?
void space. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think one of the things that yeah, in a way, having these different interactions, like you don't spend all your time with one person, but split it between multiple people or no people. I always try to take a day or so for myself where I don't do anything with anybody. Um, it, yeah, it definitely it makes the time that you spend together that much more meaningful because it isn't, like in a monogamous relationship, you come home from work or whatever, and that person is always there. So you kind of come to expect there to always be this person always. And especially if you're like married and stuff, because then you're legally bound essentially in that regard. Um, and in this way, it's like there isn't that expectation. You have to actively work to keep things going,
Mhm.
to keep things fresh and active, and so there's no, I don't know. It's like in a way that uncertainty, I guess, makes it more. It strengthens the relationship
Hmm.
or the relationships in a way, and that sort of variety, I think. I don't know. I'm now I'm trying to think of exactly how to phrase it. It'll hit me later, I'm
Rather
sure.
have a good example. That brings up another idea, kind of to circle back around to equity. I bet that if you or a partner had to go to the hospital, visitation could be a little messy, right? Because there isn't really like a legal partnership in a multi uh, relationship sort of sense, right? Like you
Well,
can't.
no, you're right. That actually is one of the things. Like I was saying, it's not, non-monogamy doesn't really have mainstream acceptance, like say, homosexuality or anything does. Where it used to be, well, you had to be married and you had to,
Mhm.
man and woman, that kind of thing. Otherwise, I don't understand why the state is involved in hospitals. Like, shouldn't hospitals be able to just decide for themselves? Like,
I
oh yeah, we'll.
think they do. I think they do. I think it is just kind of a blanket accepted thing. Like just for, I mean, like say somebody's got like 150 friends that might visit them. It's like
Yeah.
you kind of want to like regulate it to the
Well, yeah,
closest
that makes
people.
sense. There's
Uh,
only so much that would be kind of insane having that many people.
mhm.
But I don't remember. Was it in Washington State? I think where they were changing that so that people who had multiple partners were able to
Oh,
visit. That's
oh,
slowly changing, and I think we'll see that kind of gain a little more acceptance. And in a way, it's like, okay, well, I think anybody should be able to visit, even like your best friend. Let's say you didn't even have a partner, and you just had one really good friend, and you're in the hospital. Like what? So
yeah,
they can't come and visit you? It's like they're basically part of your family.
right.
Um, and I could
Well,
see, like you said, like a whole crowd of people coming in
yeah,
at once, right?
yeah,
That's a little ridiculous. But
yeah.
maybe one person here, one person there. Like I don't see why that should be limited.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, that's how it is, right? Like I visited friends in hospital. You came to see me in the hospital, which I barely remember. Um,
Yeah. So do
but
I.
I have a good reason though. It's
Yeah.
called Dilaudid. Uh,
I don't.
but like, yeah, I mean, they don't really put barriers in your way unless it actually becomes a problem. So I think on the books it's there in case they have to enforce that, but I don't think it's really a problem. I mean, when it comes to like legal decisions and stuff like that, yeah, then you're getting, like you couldn't walk into my hospital room and be like, yeah, Casey totally wants you to pull the plug. Okay.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, and maybe honestly, that should be something that's up to the individual, and that's probably something that people ought to put down in some kind of official writing prior to anything happening or that decision needing to be made. Because maybe you don't want your next of kin or your close family to make that decision for you, because maybe you're not friendly with them.
Yeah.
And you might want like your best friend or one particular partner or something to make that decision. um,
Yeah. I mean, so in a poly situation, whereas I might give a power of attorney to my wife, who I know I'm committed to for lifetime, right? Um, who would you like? Whom would you choose to do that, or would you maybe give it to a couple different people because in an emergency situation, maybe one person's not able to be reached, but could you do that? Can you? Can you
oh,
actually do that?
I don't know, but you should be able to, because I mean, what I would want is I would want all the partners to kind of vote on it, like take a vote, and like let's say there's three partners or four partners or whatever. Like, okay, everybody, I would want as many people as possible to look at the situation and make a decision together, rather than just one person, because that would be, I don't know if I would feel comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So
Lawyers
it's
are
like,
watching right now and they're like, oh, this is a great idea to make money. Like,
yeah,
think of how much I
exactly.
could charge to draft that shit up. Like, oh.
But I mean, that would be my personal desire, is that all the partners together would sort of have a powwow and decide, like, okay,
Now,
well, this.
okay, so obviously you could do that in an unofficial sense, right? You could have one of them be the power of attorney and tell them, hey, whomever at the time are my partners, please take a vote. If I'm being kicked off the island, or like that. No, that's kind of a cool idea. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe all families should really operate that way, right? Like
I
those
think so.
difficult decisions about pulling the plug, it always tends to fall to one person, or like maybe it isn't even like spoken that one person is going to do it, but like one person just finally says, you know what, like somebody has to do this. So like, and that, man, how hard is that? Like,
That's really hard. And yeah, and what if that person, everybody is saying yay, and that person is the one who has the nay stance, that kind of thing. Like, I could imagine that being a problem.
yeah,
And that's where it's like, I don't think it makes sense to have there be a designated person. It should almost be like, okay, well, we're going to pool the votes from everybody in the chosen circle. And if it comes out yay, then we're going to, or whatever, and
do it
a decision.
anonymously. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that would make more sense. And then it's like, okay, well, everybody, it's been decided then.
Because
This is what we're going to do.
imagine that like coming to and being like, okay, who voted to pull the plug?
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
We're gonna have a little conversation.
Yeah. Oh man. but I kind of believe in that sort of that process. I think that makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, that is something you could have with, like a whole family or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if people ever do that.
I don't know.
Like, I mean, so like when it comes to family, like drafting that up in a legal sense, not so bad. But when it comes to like quality relationships, where the turnover might be a little higher, maybe I'm incorrect in assuming so, but
Sometimes,
yeah, I mean, like that could get expensive, right? Like making that legal, I mean,
yeah.
So like, yeah, that's probably why I would opt for like choosing one person and then asking them to honor your wish to have the vote.
Sure, and that would certainly work with somebody you know and trust really well. And in a way, I would almost say, like, okay, if I had to choose a person, I would not choose partners as that person. So I would choose a trusted person, like yourself, for instance. Like, okay, Casey is the one who will make the decision, but I want you, Casey, to ask all my partners, whoever they may be, and have them take a vote, and then you being more or less neutral in that regard, would make the decision like based on whatever they say. So since I know you're going to be around, I could just say, okay, well, whoever is in my life right now, just take a vote from them, and then you make the decision. So like the third party, essentially.
I could get $35 a month extra in royalties if you want to. Do you kind of prefer being in that state though? Like a little bit less responsibility, a little more freedom for yourself, like nobody's super dependent on you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I consider myself to be a relationship anarchist, essentially.
Yeah. What do you mean by that exactly?
Like, it's sort of basically it's like applying the principles of anarchism to relationships.
As a relationship anarchist and an ethical non-monogamous, say a woman comes up to you who's in a monogamous married relationship, has kids and all that stuff. Husband doesn't know anything about it, but she wants to have a side thing with you. What do you do?
That's ultimately what it's all about. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like I could never be monogamous ever, but I don't fault anybody if they're monogamous. Like, like if you're happy, then that's all that matters.